This is a really consequential election. It is now about 7.5 weeks away, April 1st. No fooling. Get the word out, folks. We got to remind people April 1st is coming up soon. And the stakes of this election really could not be any more significant. The future of our state and the future of all of our fundamental rights and freedoms are on the line. So we got to get out there and make sure that voters know what their choice is in this election. Do they want to have a justice on the Supreme Court who's going to use some common sense, who knows right from wrong, is going to protect the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Wisconsinites and make sure we have fair elections in Wisconsin? Or do we want to have somebody on our Supreme Court who has a long history as an extreme partisan politician who is bringing a political agenda to the Wisconsin Supreme Court? Well, I've been traveling all around the state for the last 6-7 months, and what I'm hearing from Wisconsinites is that they want common sense justice on our Supreme Court. They want somebody who is going to stand up for the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Wisconsinites, and one who's going to protect Wisconsin communities. So that's why I'm running. That's what I've done for my entire career as a lawyer and now as a judge. And that's because of the values that I learned growing up in Wisconsin, in Chippewa Falls. Anybody ever been up there, Chippewa? All right. A great community, kind of place where people know each other and look out for each other. And my dad was an engineer with a degree from UW-Madison that he earned on the GI Bill after serving our country in Korea. Says he was shot at. I don't have any confirmation of that, but he was there during war times. My mom was a third-generation Wisconsinite. She still is. Shouldn't use the past tense. My mom is a third-generation Wisconsinite from Greene County, Wisconsin, where my mom and dad still live today. My mom has been doing a little campaign work for me. She's got a little stack of my flyers. She's taking them to the neighbor's house and saying, "This is my daughter, you should vote for her." And my mom has a big birthday coming up this year. She's going to be 90 years old on April 1st, guys. She deserves to have the best birthday ever, right? All right, but growing up in Chippewa Falls, with my two brothers and my little sister and my mom and dad, great place to grow up. I remember getting out in the lakes this time of year with my dad, ice fishing, freezing my butt off. And that little plywood shanty that he built, but catching a lot of panfish to take home to mom. And but things weren't always easy for my family. I had a little sister who was born with a medical condition and had really significant special needs. And oftentimes I, as your big sister, was the one who was assigned to watch out for her, make sure she got to school safely, make sure she got home safely, walking up and down the street with snowdrifts up to here, holding her hand. So watching out for people and protecting people is something that came really early for me. And later on, when I was in high school, my dad was laid off from his job. And it took him a while to find another one. And in the meantime, we went through some real tough times as a family. But we all pulled together, certainly learned the value of hard work, learned right from wrong, and learned how to watch out for each other and stick together. I ended up financing my own college education as a result of that. And believe me, I know the value of hard work. But, my family got through that, and I'm sure that many of you here have similar stories you could tell about your own families and about the communities that you grew up in. Those are things that we share as Wisconsinites. So I started my legal career at the Wisconsin Department of Justice as a prosecutor. I was handling the toughest felony cases all the way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. First argued in front of the Wisconsin Supreme Court back in 1998 in front of then Chief Justice Shirley Abrahamson. Remember Shirley? An icon in Wisconsin judicial history, if there ever was one. Justice Ann Walsh Bradley was there at that time too. But as a prosecutor, I always worked really hard to make sure that people who committed terrible crimes were held accountable, held in prison, that crime victims' rights were protected in the process, our communities were kept safe, and that justice was done. That was the bottom line, the most important thing. And later in my career, I had the opportunity to represent people like all of you, regular Wisconsinites, in our courts fighting for your rights. Any teachers in the room? There's always teachers in the room. Let's hear it for our teachers. Yeah. As a lawyer, I represented public school teachers when their rights were taken away from them in the workplace and fought for them, stood up in court and fought for them. I stood up and fought for voting rights of Wisconsinites to try to make sure that every Wisconsinite who's eligible to vote has the opportunity to do that. And I represented Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin and their doctors when the legislature enacted some laws that tried to make it tougher for them to provide health care services to women, making sure that they could deliver those services without having to fear a felony prosecution or the loss of their medical license. So the reason I'm telling you about that is, and I want to be clear, I'm not telling you about those things to say how I would rule on any future case. I'm telling you that because I want you to know that I have stood up in courtrooms and fought for all of you and all of your fundamental rights and freedoms. It's an important part of my history as a lawyer. Then in 2018, I took the bench. I was elected in Dane County to the Circuit Court. I've been a judge ever since then. I work hard every day to make sure that everyone who comes through my courtroom leaves feeling like they were treated with respect by the judge and that they got their day in court. You know, I give everybody a fair shake in my courtroom. I want everybody to know that when I sit down behind the bench, I am standing up for Wisconsin families and Wisconsin values. And that's what kind of justice I'm going to be on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Woo! Now, the stakes are high because my opponent, Brad Schimmel, has always been about partisanship, politics, and self-promotion. Those are the things that he has worked on throughout his entire career. And Justice Karofsky told you about the rape kits that he left untested for 2 years plus. What was he doing while he was not getting to those rape kits? Well, he wasn't shy about going to the legislature for more resources for the Department of Justice. He did do that, and he asked for more lawyers. He asked for a solicitor general to go to court and argue for him. And he had that solicitor general get involved in right-wing lawsuits, not just in Wisconsin, but all over the country. That was his priority as Attorney General. So, for example, he got Wisconsin involved in a lawsuit to try to overturn the Affordable Care Act.
Of course.
Did that help any Wisconsinite?
No.
No, it did not. Who was it helping?
The insurance company.
The health insurance industry. That's right. That's who wanted that law overturned. They didn't like having to give coverage to people with pre-existing health conditions, right? Luckily, that was not successful. If it had been, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Wisconsinites would have lost their health insurance coverage. Another thing he was not doing, along with those sexual assault kits, is addressing the opioid crisis in Wisconsin. He's the Attorney General. You would have thought it was job number one. But he was one of the only Attorney Generals in the country, one of a very few, who refused to get involved in a national lawsuit against the opioid manufacturers to hold them accountable for the harms they caused our communities and the devastation of so many people, families, individuals in Wisconsin by flooding our communities with addictive drugs. He didn't have time for that, I guess. He had time to take the campaign contributions from the pharmaceutical manufacturers, but not to actually do something about the crisis. So Brad Schimmel, always about his own partisan agenda, always about his own political future, not somebody we need on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So the stakes are high, and we have a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of people out there that don't know this election is coming. And it's going to have the tendency to sneak up on us because it's the first of the month, right? So I need all of you to help me with that. I need you to talk to your friends and your neighbors and your family and let them know that this election is coming up. And I want you to tell them why it is that you're supporting common sense justice and not extreme partisanship for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So are you with me, folks? I know that with the help of good people like you and all the people that you're going to talk to, that we're going to win this election. So on Wisconsin.
Weekends finally here, time to do some cheer. Come on, everybody, gather round. Wisconsin winter cold, it's getting kinda old, but the antidote